This is the fourth in a series of 5 videos of class notes on review of square roots. The general outline is that the first video talked about simplifying square roots, the second one about multiplying square roots, the third one about adding and subtracting square roots, and then graphing square roots is the fourth one, and that's the one that we're going to do right now. The following one will do domain and range of square roots. So if we look at a function, y is equal to square root of x, and let's graph that, then the first thing that we should do is make a table. So let's make an xy table. And what we want to notice when we have square root of x is that will not be defined when x is a negative number. So if we look here, make an xy table, x and y. If x is negative, the square root of a negative number doesn't exist. So we're just going to use positive numbers. So let's use 0, let's use 4, 9, 16, 36. Now I've chosen these numbers so that they'll end up, there won't be decimals. If there were decimals, that would be fine. It'd just be a little bit harder to graph. The square to find, once you choose your x values, to find your y values, you simply plug them in. So the square root of 0 is 0, and the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of 36 is going to be 6. And we'll graph it in just a second, but the basic idea of your graph is it looks something like this. This is 0, 0. Then we're going to go 4, 2, and it's going to look something like that. In fact, we'll graph that out right now, and we'll see that that in fact is the case. And that's what the square root of x looks like. So let's go ahead and use some graph paper, and let's go ahead and graph these values. So let's draw an xy graph. Let that be 0, 0. That was one of our points. And the next point that we had was 4, 2. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Put a point. The next one was 9, 3. So that's 4. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3. And then 16, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 4. And what you end up with is you have a graph that looks about like that. And that's what y is equal to square root of x looks like. And you actually want to you're going to want to memorize the basic graph of y is equal to the square root of x. Starts at 0, 0. It increases at a decreasing rate. So now let's talk about how we can graph a more generalized function of y is equal to square root of x. Let's graph y is equal to a square root of x minus h plus k. And if you notice, this looks a lot like when we learned how to graph parabolas, a x minus h squared plus k. In fact, the parameters or the letters are going to mean exactly the same thing. So what you do is you basically start here with the graph y equals x that starts at 0, 0. Y is equal to square root of x. And the h is going to move it left and right. So it picks the entire graph out and either moves it left or right. And the k will move it up and down. Now there's a difference here that's very important. The h is going to change sign, and the k won't change sign. This is just like when we looked at y is equal to a x minus h squared plus k. When we're trying to find the vertex, it was h and k, but the h would change sign, the k would not. And that's another thing to memorize. The a is actually going to do two things. The two things that a does is, first, if a is negative, then the graph will flip And if A is positive, it doesn't flip. And then the absolute value of A, if the absolute value of A is greater than 1, then it's going to be steeper. And if absolute value of A is less than 1, it's going to be flatter. And we'll see what that means in just a second. So let's say we want to graph y is equal to minus 2 square root x minus 3 minus 5. Well, the first thing we do is we want to identify the starting point. And the starting point was 0, 0. But now it's going to be hk, where the h changes sign, the k doesn't. So the h is, if you look at this, this becomes a 3, right? It changes signs from a negative 3 to positive 3. And the k doesn't change signs, so negative 3, 5. So that's going to identify where we start from. And that's your first step. The second step is you're going to identify whether it flips. And in this case, how do you tell that? You tell if A is positive or negative, and this time A is negative. So the answer is yes. So you kind of know what the graph looks like already. If this is square root of x, the new starting point is 3 minus 5, excuse me. 3 minus 5, that's your new starting point. It would look like this except for it flips, so it's actually going to look like that. The third step is you're going to make a table. And it takes a little bit of art to make the table. What you're going to need to do is you're going to make the table. It's a little bit like doing a table for a parabola, but not exactly. Here you have x and y. You're going to put the starting point first, and that's going to be 3, negative 5. And then you're going to choose two x values that are larger than 3. Now it doesn't matter which values you choose. You want to be careful here if you can. If you can choose a number so that the square root of a number is not a decimal, that's better. But if it's not, that's fine. You can just use a calculator. So if I put in 0 here, for example, that wouldn't work because I need a number that's bigger than 3. So let's say I choose a number like 4. 4 would be 4 minus 3 is 1, square root of 1. That would work. And then if I chose 5, it would be 5 minus 3 square root of 2. That would be a decimal, so I don't want to choose that. Let me choose 12, because 12 minus 3 is going to be 9. Let me just move this table a little bit so that we can see how to plug these numbers in real quick. So I have y is equal to minus 2 square root x minus 3 minus 5. I'm going to plug in 4, so that's minus 2, 4 minus 3 minus 5, and that's a square root sign. That's minus 2 square root of 1 minus 5. Square root of 1 is 1, so that's minus 2 minus 5, or minus 7. Right? All I did is I chose x is equal to 4, and I found out what y is, and y is equal to minus 7. And again, I can choose any x values I want to as long as it's an x value that's larger than the starting point. If I didn't choose carefully, I would get a decimal, and then that would be fine. It's just I would use a calculator. Now I'm going to choose x equals 12. So I'll plug in 12 where the x is. So that's y is equal to minus 2. 12 minus 3 minus 5. 12 minus 3 is going to be 9, so that's minus 2 square root of 9 minus 5. 9 is square root of 9 is 3, so that's minus 2 times 3 minus 5. That's minus 6 minus 5, which is minus 11. So let's look at our points again. Our steps again. Step number 1, identify the starting point. You get that by the HK. Second, see if the graph flips, and it does. Third step, make a table. You make a table by choosing x's. Plug in to solve for y. The fourth step then is going to be just to draw your graph. And we'll do that step right now. So you want to do an XY graph. I want to start at the point 3 minus 5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The next point is 4 minus 7, so that's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then 12 minus 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Minus 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Minus 11. Be careful here. That's minus 11. 12 is going to be right there. You notice the graph it starts off kind of steep, gets kind of flatter. It looks something like that. And that's how you graph square root functions.